Hi, I'm Ralph Preston, and welcome to another Stroke Buddies Stroke Survivors Support Group meeting. We have these meetings every Tuesday, and we try and bring survivors recovery and science information, because I believe that a focused approach is always the best approach, and the more you know, the more focused your approach can be. Today, we're lucky to have Corey Emberton, and Corey is a Neuro Pilates specialist, medically certified, and this is something that I've been interested in for a long time, but only met Corey recently. So I think this should be interesting, and I hope you do too. So, Corey, why don't you start off by just telling us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, first of all, thank you all for having me. And like Ralph said, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. My name is Corey Emberton. I have a bachelor's degree in actual physical education and a master's degree in health and human performance. And when I was in grad school, I worked at the campus Neuromuscular Wellness Center, and we worked with individuals within the community that had chronic pain or may have had some type of neurological conditions such as stroke or Parkinson's. And that's what really got me into the neuro world because I always felt that typical exercises were great, but I felt like there could be more. I felt like my patients, my clients could get more out of a movement than what we were seeing in textbooks. So that led me to always be curious about everything. If I had a client move, I was very curious and questioned myself, like, okay, why is my client doing a squat and say, like, there's spasticity in their right arm increasing? Which led me to even more research and looking for information. And that's where I found a place also called the Neuro Studio. And I don't know if anybody's familiar with it, which I see some head shakes. Uh, Megan Coppell at the Neural Studio is actually my mentor. Um, I have been working with her for several years. She is also licensed Pilates instructor, and she's really come up with some great techniques that I've incorporated into my work too when working with individuals that may be affected by a neurological condition. So let's dial back a little bit. So that's kind of been like my my trajectory. I'm currently in Chicago. I do in homes with individuals, so I will go to their home and work out with them. And I also do a lot of virtual work. So I do some virtual classes depending, and I also do one-on-one sessions with my clients. And the beauty about Pilates and movement in general, you can do it anywhere. Yeah. So I really wanted to reach more people, and that's why I started to doing more virtual work. And that's how I started working with Megan Coppell, the founder of the Neuro Studio. So let's look at Pilates. Pilates are specific movements that also can be comparable to other general movements. Like our body moves, right? In a sense, like there's the spine it goes through rotation, flexion, extension, different types of movements, and then different modalities use those movements of our body and they give their little specialties. So let's think about Pilates. The good thing about Pilates is that it really teaches an individual some more body awareness, but in a safe, adaptable way. There's a lot of different, has anybody like seen different types of Pilates equipment before? Yeah, so there's There's things called reformers, which you're able to do lower body, upper body, and footwork. And it utilizes springs instead of resistance bands, which is you can increase, decrease the tension of it, but really allows someone to get the handle of knowing how to utilize parts of their body in, let's say, a lying down position if they couldn't fully stand up and support. So it's a great way to adapt to every individual and help them get to the point and work in different body positions. Like I said, yeah, there's great pieces of equipment. And then Pilates exercise, like I said, can be done anywhere. You can do it without equipment. So with Pilates, yes, it doesn't use resistance band, but that doesn't mean I won't have a client get a resistance band and use it in a way that we would in Pilates. And I'll dive deeper into that a little bit and show you, but just to give you a little idea, like right now I have a resistance band tied up here, and I may have a client utilize that band on a specific body part to help give them a little bit more reference to where that limb might be or what we're trying to work on. Now let's dive in. How do we turn Pilates or movement into like a neuro approach? So one thing, it is different for every individual. And what I mean, and I think I talked to Ralph a little bit about this, I can give Ralph a cue, but that doesn't mean that same cue might work for another individual. And then we'll talk a little bit about the cues that I will speak about. Also, what I think about it is you're not necessarily defined by your stroke. You have a name. You're an individual, and there's things that happened in your life before your stroke. Some individuals may have had scars or surgeries, replacements, or you may have fell and broke your wrist when you were a kid. So all these little things can actually change or make it more challenging in our movement pattern. So it's very important for me to understand who you are as an individual and throughout your life, pre and post stroke. And to make things a little bit more neuro is we're going to use different systems within the body that we don't necessarily consciously think about. So let's go back to when we were born as a child, as a baby, the process of learning to walk. Who kind of remembers how they started walking or what process really took place? I mean, it's like a little bit, you might remember that you first stood, but what was your body going through during that process? And the big thing is we can just call it sensory information, right? So sensory information is information that we take in from our senses. One of the big ones is being our eyes, what we see around us. It's not, I tell people, it's not just what you see in the world, but it's how you move within the world. And that I think that's one thing we don't necessarily think about, like including our eyes and vision into our workout. And some other sensory systems are something called like proprioception. So can anybody feel their shirt on their skin right now? Can you feel your hair on your neck? Can you feel your butt pushing down into the chair? So those are types of proprioceptive pressure, feeling of a tingling, and just what your skin is taking in, the information. And then another big one, it's called your vestibular system. So it's your inner ear, and basically I won't go into too much like neural jargon, but you have fluids in your ear, and it gives you an understanding of where your head is in time and space. So using some things like that in with Pilates exercises and equipment and really finding the cues that work for the individual is how you kind of turn it into Neuro Pilates. And the beauty about those systems, you really need two of those systems to really work together to give your body to feel balanced, to feel safe. And I would ask, does anybody here deal with spasticity? If you want to share, you don't have to. So, what spasticity is, and I won't go, I'm sure you know, it's a mishap in the startle reflex. But what I have learned is that spasticity will tell us something. When we start to feel that spasticity, whether it's in that bicep, arm, quad, or calf, there's something going on during the movement, and our body's like, okay, hold on now. Because it's basically almost like it's protecting you, even though, it's an increase in symptom. So that's a big thing when I work with clients, no matter what condition or symptoms they may have. I need to understand what we're doing. And the symptom, I don't just treat the symptom, I understand and learn from the symptom. And how can I give them a cue that helps decrease that symptom and give them a little bit more, basically, their brain feeling safe through that? There any questions about that? And I can talk about spasticity and some exercises a little bit more in detail too.
That would be great.
See, I think Ryan has a question.
Okay. It's muted though.
Yep, you're mute.
Yes, apologies. You mentioned there were two neurosystems. One was the head, and the second one was
Yeah, so three that you need at least two to kind of work together, and it doesn't necessarily matter which two, and every individual is different. So you have your vestibular, which is your inner ear. You have your visual system, which is just how your eyes can receive information. And then you have your proprioceptive, is what you feel, what your body feels. And it's all three of those have a direct correlation to a part of your brain. And it's literally, it's not a part of your brain that I'm talking about. It's not even this big. And I'm going to show you, it's in the back of that head, and it's called your cerebellum. Okay. And what the cerebellum does is use the information through those systems to help maintain safety or help maintain balance within the body. And the cool thing about that little part of your brain, it's actually about 10% of the brain volume. So it's tiny, but it has over half of the neurons in in the body. So that little thing right there to me is just, it's powerful. It has half of the neurons in your whole body. And the cool thing about it is when I work with somebody and give them a cue, whether it's like a proprioceptive cue, a visual or vestibular, I give them the cue to see if then their body can figure out how to correct the movement pattern. Because that is one part of your cerebellum actually helps with regulating, understanding if a movement's a little bit off and how to correct that. The hard thing is it takes work, right? When we first learned to walk as an infant, we didn't just like pop right up and be like, okay, I'm just going to keep on walking. It really took time, and as an infant, we utilized the sensory systems and the information around us to kind of like, oh, I'm losing my balance a little bit. And then my cerebellum and brain could kind of fix that. But now we got to work a little bit harder and find a cue that would work with somebody and implement that throughout the day. I get to work out with like a client for an hour, but what I'd like to teach my client is more of a concept versus an exercise, right? Can we take a movement or an exercise and find some concept or some movement or cue that works for them that helps their body feel safe. Any other questions about kind of like the brain, the neuro aspect, and the systems that work? Just think about it this way. It's where your head is in time and space. What can we see around us? What do we feel? In a sense. And that's kind of what makes it neuro. And again, it is totally different for every individual. So let's do this. We're going to just do a little bit of movement. Now, understand the movement that I'm going to give you today. We're just going to keep on things simple because I don't know your full previous history. I don't want to make it a too complicated movement or get you to the point where you don't feel safe. So we're just going to add in some of these cues and see which one may work for you. So feel free to participate or just sit back and watch. If you're going to participate, what I'd like you to do is just make sure that you have enough room that you could kind of like move your body forward without hitting anything. Okay. All right. So now what I want you to do is just simply, we're going to just work on a little bit of weight shifting. Okay. So weight shift forward and back. I want everybody to just give me 3 more reps. Weight shift forward and back. 2 more. Good. Last one. All right. Now, I want you to, now proprioception, stay there. I'm going to add a little bit. Proprioception is what we feel. Sometimes that can be affected by the stroke, right? In the affected side. So I don't want to necessarily not give a proprioceptive cue, but I want to understand what my client can feel. Before I really give them a proprioceptive cue, I may go up to them, grab their foot or their hand, or depending on where I'm wanting the body, is I may just go push on them. I say, can you feel the pressure? I may like scratch at their heel or foot. I'm like, can you feel that? So that gives me a little bit more detail of understanding if a proprioceptive cue is a good, or do we need to work on something different? So now what I want you to do is just hone in on your feet. What do you feel? Do you feel your heels more on the floor or in your shoe? Do you feel your toes more? Do you feel the inside or the outside of your foot right now? Okay. Now what I want you to do is shift forward again. And can you hold that? Now, what I want you to think about, did the pressure in your feet change? Or did it stay the same and come back? So, one thing about this, you may have been like, Corey, my pressure didn't change at all. Okay, that's good. Or you might be like, Corey, my pressure did change. That's still good. But notice how 2 people can be different. So again, cues can be different. So if you felt a pressure change, would you be willing to tell me or where you felt it move from to and from? Anybody? Okay, Ryan, I saw you. Can you unmute yourself and tell me what you felt?
Yes, for the first one, I felt pretty much my whole foot from the toes to the heel. But for the second one, it moved more to the toes.
More to the toes. Okay, we're going to play around with what Ryan told us, and then everybody can kind of follow through. But let's think about that. Right now, what part of the body are we moving? Technically, what I'm moving is, as I'm shifting my weight in my chair, I'm moving my hips around my leg. Okay. So when Ryan tells me he then feels his toes, I want to like, okay, let's work on right there because I want to find more of a stable base. Because I'm not necessarily moving the feet right now. We're just moving the hips and the body over the legs. So what I would tell Ryan, okay, Ryan said he felt it mostly throughout your foot, right? And then as you shift forward, you felt it into your toes. Ryan, can you give me 3 reps? And what I want you to focus on as you shift forward, try not to increase the pressure into your toes. So you go for that, Ryan. Try to give me 3 reps without increasing the pressure into your toes. Okay. And if anybody else try and shift forward without that deep pressure increasing into your toes or into that part of your foot. And relax. Not necessarily saying, hey, don't move your foot, but we need our feet to also produce force and absorb force.
Actually, it's strongly familiar to me with when I was young, I took some Taekwondo, so it's like bowing to your teacher, your sensei. So
Yeah,
all the movements at my waist, less of it goes to my legs.
good. So we got that right there was just trying to get a little bit more movement out of the waist without the feet kind of taking over. Okay. Now with just a weight shift, let's think about this. All right. I want I want you to find a spot diagonally on the floor, past your toes or on the table. Now, all I want you to do is shift towards what you're looking at and away. Good. Give me 3 more reps. Shift towards what you're looking at and away. 2 more. Towards it and away. Last one. Towards it and away. So then that is a little bit more of just using your visual to give you a movement. So you're moving towards a target and away from a target. All right. The other one is just like vestibular. It's a little bit different, right? So it's basically we'll do it. This one might sound a little weird because it's super different. Okay. So what I want you to think about is, okay, think about your head being full, halfway full of a liquid of water. Okay. So what I want you to do is tilt the water out of your nose and then back up. Good. Tilt out of your nose and back up. I want you to keep going and then observe the rest of your body. Do you feel any pressure differences in your hips, your feet? If you do, I want you to try not to increase the pressure there as you tilt that water out of your nose and back up. Good. Now let's keep it level. All right. Now I want you to go into that weight shift. I want you to think about almost you're leading with that, spilling that water out of your nose to get that weight shift, and then bringing it back up to level with the rest of your body. Okay, try 3 reps for me. So spill it out of your nose as you let the rest of your body follow, and then bring it up to level. 2 more. Spill it out of your nose and bring it back up. 1 more. Spill it out of your nose and back up. Okay, now we just worked on just a little bit of weight shifting. But what I might look at when I have a client weight shift in just a seated position is the rest of their spine moving? Is their feet really pushing down in the floor when I'm just wanting their upper body to move? Are their eyes kind of going here, there, and everywhere? Did anyone find whether it was the eyes, the water spill, or the foot? Did anyone even find a difference or enjoy one more than the other?
It seemed pretty much the same to me. I didn't feel any difference in my feet in any of the 3 of them.
What about you, Ralph or Ryan?
I felt an overall sense of like a slight increase of pressure going upwards to my head, like a sense of like a additional oxygen,
Oh,
like a little shift.
You feel like it gave you a little bit more body awareness?
Yes.
Okay, cool. And that was just like a simple of like understanding what's visual, what's vestibular, what's proprioception, and you can use it in any type of situation, no matter the exercise. Okay. So what I want to show you now is I'm going to just show you one of my clients. His name's Frank. I've been working with him for several years. And the one thing that we really pay attention to is some of the spasticity he has in his affected side, which is his actual right side. When you see the video, it may look to the left. So we're just going to look at a video of him doing a squat, and then I'm going to show you a video of him doing a squat with sensory cues. Okay. Okay. So the first video is, I'm going to pause. The one that's going right now. What I want you to pay attention is look at Frank's right leg. Kind of shifts out to the side as he goes down into that squat. He's got a little bit of tightness in that right calf. And then his body kind of weaves in and out and gets a little bit of like, almost like a little bit of rotation, right? So what I did for Frank is I gave him two cues. One cue was a visual cue to help him, and the other one was a body awareness cue. Because in a squat, it's an up and down motion, but also a squat is very important for your hips. So your hips need to move around your legs instead of just going like that. And then I'll just have you look at the difference with Frank. I'll play it one more time. Good. And we'll relax it from there. So one was without sensory cues. The second one was with sensory cues. And you could tell me what you think, but in my opinion, the second version that we saw with sensory cues is he looked more focused. He had less movement of that right outside leg or that leg swinging out to the side and back in, and his body seemed a little bit more centered. And that's what we're looking for, is just a little bit of a change when you do a certain exercise. Yes, Judy.
Do you remember what the visual cue was that you gave him?
Yeah, sorry about that. So basically, what I told Frank is I said, okay, I want you to look at a target. All right. And that's something that was him just standing up. So then I'm like, all right, Frank, now what I want you to do, I'm going to tilt my camera up a little bit so you can see me a little better. So I said, Frank, find a visual target right in front of you. Now all I want you to do is get below that visual target and above it. And then it was pretty good. That's the first cue I gave him. So then I wanted to give him another cue to help him understand how to move his hips, which is his pelvis, around the femur, which is the upper leg. So I had him put his hand on his butt, or I'm like, pretend you got your hand in your pocket back there. Okay. Now, as you get below your target, I want you to focus on that hand moving back with your butt and coming up. Get below that target and move that hand back and come up. So sometimes we just need that little bit of extra feedback. So I used a visual cue, and the hand on the butt, the pocket, what type of cue was that? Do you think it was vestibular or proprioceptive?
Proprioception.
Yeah, proprioception. So he could kind of feel where his body was at in time and space. And then did you notice where Frank's spasticity was in his right arm? Or on there, it looks like it's left. So let me show you Can you still see my screen?
No, you have to share it again
Okay.
because we can't see you when you're sharing the screen.
So we're just going to look at a photo that I took of Frank yesterday, or sorry, this past Friday. So this is Frank on Friday. So you can tell by his arm that there's less spasticity in it currently than the video before. And this is something we've really worked on with Frank, is understanding when his spasticity increases and decreases. Okay. And a goal for him too is when we find a cue is implemented into his program. So one of the things, and I'll do it with everybody here too, is once you can see me again. If you're comfortable with standing up and out of a chair and going to like a sit to stand, let's do that. But let's just use a visual cue. I'm gonna show you what worked for Frank, and then we'll just keep working with you all. So basically, anytime Frank would get up and out of a chair, his arm would increase in spasticity. So we needed to see what's going on there. What's happening with the rest of his body when his spasticity is increasing? Well, I noticed that just like in the video, you kind of saw Frank kind of do that little swirl and look. So what I wanted to do is he's moving his body up. So think about this. When you're moving in a certain direction, you want to like look at a target and move the head in that direction. So I had Frank, I'm gonna have everybody do it. Okay, so do this for me real quick. And just do a stand and a sit. Do 2 of them. Okay, now what I want you to do is let's look back down to the floor. Find that visual target. Now shift your body towards it and away. Towards it and away. Good. Do one more, and can you hold it there? Good. Keep your body in this position. Now can you look up, find a new visual target, something higher up. Now what I want you to do is try to stand up towards it, get closer to it as you stand up. Now get below it and away from it. Try one more on your own, and then let's talk through it. I want to know what worked for some people, what didn't work for some people. Okay, let's take a little break. What did it work well for anybody?
Yes.
Okay, what if you raised your hand, or Angela, Winnie, Ryan, what difference did you feel?
Initially, when I started getting up, I was wobbly, but as the second and third time, I was going up straight up and down.
Okay, nice. That's awesome. What about you, Angela? If you care to share.
I felt a little bit more connectivity. I really have some proprioception and time and space issues that have been incredibly disruptive on this path. And I've been trying to figure out how to like get these into a different space. And my PT and I are working on all different kinds of things, but this is a really, really good idea because I felt immediate connection. Like I felt very different when I was honing in on one specific thing. When I close my eyes, I like lose all sense. And I feel like I'm just going to topple right over. And I'm noticing that is getting a little different, but I'm having a hard time figuring that one out too. If you are going to give any tips on that, that's awesome.
Yeah, Angela, let's think about you just did a visual cue and you felt like it really connected your body. So I would
Yeah.
almost say like that is a cue that's really speaking to your body. And
Hmm.
we already know from what you told me that you've got some of that proprioceptive, I'm just going to call it wonkiness. Like, I don't know what my body feels like or where are my limbs at? So when you take away your vision, you're trying to use your proprioception, which we already know is a little wonky on what you're feeling, and then you're trying to hone in on your vestibular system. And right now, I'm not for sure how your vestibular system is working right now. So I would say we need to work on visual cues and then add in proprioception or vestibular to give you a better sense of where your body is in time and space. Does
Yeah.
that make sense?
Yeah, it makes complete sense. I've been very interested in actually maybe moving into a Pilates studio local and start working with somebody. I wasn't sure how that would elevate what I'm doing. I currently do physical therapy and a ton of yoga. I do a lot of breath. I do a lot of weights, trying to change everything. And made major changes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So,
do this, Angela. When let's say you're doing um some type of standing yoga pose,
mhm,
find a visual target, and then
yeah.
I'm just making this up. Go through the pose and try to stay centered with your target. Okay. And it's also okay if like you try to balance it and you're trying to, let's say, just do a warrior pose and you're kind of already shifting left and right and you're like, okay, what's going on? It's okay to find a target, tell your brain, okay, let's just shift around it. Let's get an understanding of like I'm actually making you shift around it now. Now let's look back at your target and try to stay centered and do the pose again. So that's just dialing in to your visual system. Now, when you did your sit, if you did your sit to stand and looking at that target didn't work, doesn't mean your visual system is not doing great. It might be like you need a different visual target. I may need you to look down and stand above your visual target because we need to keep the body going up and over. And then once, let's say I got you into out of that seated position like this, then I'm going to have you look up and stand up taller. So sometimes it's playing around too with just because I gave a visual cue doesn't mean visual cues don't work. It might not been the right visual cue. Or it could mean like, let's not do the visual cue. Let's go use your uh head of water cue and try to find and see if that helps you too. Yes, Ryan.
In my case, my visual cue is very inspirational. It's a picture of my nieces and nephews who I'll be going to see within the next month up in Ohio.
Oh, that's awesome.
So the idea of rising up and going toward them was a real incentive in itself.
And use that. Like today, if you found something that worked for you, incorporate that into your day throughout your day. So, Ryan, Angela, Winnie, if that worked for you, anytime you get out of your chair today, anytime you sit down, anytime you kind of go up and down in that motion, I want you to find that visual target and depending where it's at, move above it, or if it's higher, move up towards it. And that's how, to me, we have you heard of neuroplasticity? Yeah, people love using it, right? They're like neuroplasticity, this, that. In my opinion, now can I tell like, wow, you just increased your neuroplasticity right there. I'm like, well, I don't have your brain hardwired to see what connection actually just happened, but I can see what your body is doing, and your body, if I gave you the right cue, had a positive response. So when you take that positive response and work it throughout your day because it's more about repetition within that quality sense. I don't need you to do 100 sit to stands right now or 30 sit to stands every 30 minutes. I need you to do one sit to stand with that cue and try to just incorporate that into what is your daily lifestyle. Yeah. So, any more questions about that? Or Ralph, do you want me to talk about anything else? I know sometimes I can go on a little tangent because stuff like this excites me. My goal is to help people learn more about their body and just learn ways to move better or adapt. And I highly disagree with people getting discharged from like PT saying you can't improve. Uh, I don't agree with that. I think everybody has that ability to improve, but it has to be detailed and it has to speak. It has to speak to you. That's Judy.
Yes.
You're muted, Judy.
You're muted. Okay.
When I think of Pilates, I think of core. Is your practice whole body or more core oriented?
It is whole body. Yes. Back like when Pilates was developed, you had a lot of core activation. So this is where my work gets a little bit different than the typical realm of Pilates. My goal is I'm gonna show you something. Take a breath in and out. Think about how easy or difficult it feels. Okay, do one more for me. Okay, now what I want you to do is tighten your core as much as you can and try to take the same breath. Okay, relax. Did it feel better? Did it feel worse? Was your breath limited? What about you, Judy?
It was harder.
It was harder. So
Yes.
what I'm trying to say here is not working the core is great, but I need to work it in a way that it reacts to what we're doing. I'm not just telling you, hey, Judy, tighten that core and pull that belly button into your spine, because then that might increase someone's spasticity. Because if you can't breathe, what do you think? Your body's going to be in a state of almost fight or flight. So we need to work on, working the core, but having it to be reactive into an exercise, let's say a bird dog or some type of up down movement. And I'm not saying that you wouldn't necessarily find some Pilates instructor that would or would not do that. Just like me, every exercise or movement specialist is going to be different. So yeah, answer your question, sorry, Judy. I do a lot more full body, and I want your body to react. And then we go from there versus me telling your body necessarily how to act. I don't want to be your sensory information. I want you to take what's in and see how you can move within it. Yeah.
Thank
Sure.
you.
Go
You're
ahead.
welcome.
Could you talk a little bit about body awareness and building body awareness?
Yeah, body awareness. Let's think about it. Sometimes we can think about, I can't necessarily feel my right ear. Some people may, some people might. But I can take my hand and I can stimulate the skin around it. Okay? So go ahead and take one hand and rub one ear. Add a little pressure or a little tickle to it. Can you feel that? And then what I may do is like, okay, Ralph, let's say we were doing some cervical movement, little lateral flexion, and I wanted you to get a little bit more movement. So I want to be like, okay, Ralph, that ear that you just stimulated, I want you to think about bringing that ear up and over your shoulder, and then bring it away from your shoulder. Good. Bring it towards your shoulder and away. So body awareness is almost like you're moving one part to the other part, and we're getting a little bit of stimulation. And Ralph, we can think about my client Frank when he was going in and out of his squat. I mean, I can't if I'm standing up, I can't feel my butt in the air, right? I can't. But what I can might be able to feel is I might be able to feel the clothing touching the skin on my butt. Okay. And then what I might be like, okay, if you're going to go into that squat, rub your pants on your butt. Okay. Now, Ralph, what I want you to do is sit your butt back into those pants that you felt, or sit your butt back into your pocket. So the thing about body awareness, you're just kind of using some things around you, whether it's two different body parts, or a body part and an object around you to give you an understanding of where your body and limbs are in time and space. Yeah, Ralph, think about your pockets. Bring your butt back into your pockets and then bring your butt away from your pockets. Into your pockets and away. And then if Ralph and I were working together and that seemed to work, then I might give him another cue as a visual cue to kind of work on that.
What would that be?
So look at a target, Ralph.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as you bring your butt back into your pockets, I want you to get below that target. And then get above and bring the butt away from the pockets. And what Ralph is doing right there, if I had a client do that, I'm like, okay, do that, because he's giving himself some feedback right there with his hands. And that's okay to use your hands to give a sense of where your body is, because when you're doing a squat, you don't want that spine to move. So maybe this cue and this cue is like, okay, I'm going to tilt those two hands forward and tilt them up. Tilt those two hands forward and up. So there's a lot of different things that you can use for body awareness. It's just trying to help get an understanding of where that body part is in time and space and how you can help move it. Again, just using.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Ralph.
Let's say I was doing it to I felt like that if I was just sitting, that I shouldn't be doing too much leaning. So I was cueing myself to keep my back more erect when I was doing the visual cue and the sitting into my pockets.
Yeah. And if like I said, if that worked for Ralph and that felt better, let's use that and then keep going with it.
I found I do that a lot in terms of thinking about or learning about my body awareness. Because a lot of times you go to do something like you do a figure four stretch or something, and next thing you know, your spine's not erect. That kind of thing. So just
one thing you can use your hands, but if you can feel your shirt on your body, that's a good thing too. So let's just say I was going into that weight shift. And you see how, like, if I do that, you see how my spine will push into my shirt, and then as it come up, it pulls away into my shirt. So let's say if I saw someone do that, I'd be like, okay, can you feel your shirt on your lower back? If they said yes, good, let's keep that. So right now, push your lower back into your shirt and away, into your shirt and away. Good, let's do one more. Push into your shirt and away. Now, as you fold forward, I want you to try to not let your spine pull away or push into your shirt and then come back up. But only go to a range of motion that you can control that. So try not to push your lower back into your shirt or pull it away as you move forward and back. So, like I said, that is just one cue that could work with somebody, could not, but it shows you a way how you can use objects and things around you, and it's just your shirt. Yeah. Any other questions? Oh, go ahead, Ralph. Sorry, I
I
interrupted
say
you.
I felt it more. I definitely felt it. I felt it more like the bottom of my scapula than I did my back actually touching it. Maybe
Okay, and then you can just use that part then, Ralph. And then when you do a certain movement, if you're not supposed to move your spine, you can think about if that part of your upper back and scapula, is it pressing in? Is it pulling away from your shirt as you're trying to go into that movement? And then you can kind of use it from there.
Well, when I folded, I focused on that part of my body because that's where I felt it, and I tried not instead of not feeling it here, I tried to not feel it here.
Oh,
Same,
nice.
same sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Any other questions about just movement in general? The Pilates, the Neuro Pilates. I'm an open book.
Here's your chance, folks.
So you're saying your hip is controlled, your leg is controlled by your hip.
So we have your pelvis. So your pelvis, and I'm going to stand up so you can see my upper body. My pelvis is right throughout that region, okay? And my pelvis sits on my upper leg, which is my femur, okay? And that makes up the hip joint. And with that, in certain movements, I want the pelvis to move around the femur, but not always them to kind of moving together. So, in a sense of like that, if I do so watch the relationship of my legs. Now, as I go back, do you see how my legs shoot back? So I'm trying to do a forward fold, which is my upper body and my pelvis around my legs. So for me, or a client, I might use a band, okay? So this is a proprioceptive cue. I'm going to put the band in front of their leg or behind it, depending on what would work. And I'm going to ask, since it's on the front of my leg, I'm going to ask myself, maintain the pressure of my legs into the band as I go into my forward fold. And maintain it as I come up. Okay. So you can tell me, did you see a difference or not?
Absolutely. Your butt didn't move back nearly as much.
Okay. And all that was is just a proprioceptive cue. And doesn't, because my legs moved and my hips, doesn't mean that it was bad. It just, I like to isolate, meaning I want to try to move one part without the other part moving. And I found when I do isolation with some of my clients, especially clients that experience spasticity, it kind of clicks in for them and their body is better able to move more efficiently without it feeling unsafe. And that's like, go ahead, Ralph.
I was saying, can you talk a little bit about blocking or isolation?
Yeah. So let's just look at some leg movement. In just a seated position. Let me tilt you down a little bit. Okay. So if I want my client to move, let's say this leg right here, they may do this. You see how both legs want to move out? Okay. I'll be like, okay, that's not bad, but I really want just this leg. I want to find stability in other parts of the body, whether that be the hip, the shoulders, the spine. So what I would be like, okay, I'm going to take this around because of the band. Let's say I wanted to move just this leg in and out and both legs were moving. This was the moving one. that I wanted to work on. And I'm gonna put a band around that area. Or now, Judy, you may have seen this if you're familiar with the Neuro Studio, is applying a hand to where that leg wanted to move. So it wanted to move out. So I'm gonna find my hand on my leg and my leg on my hand. Now, the goal here is not to hold this leg into place. It's just to give it some feedback to let it understand, like, hey, dude, you are moving way too much when I was trying to move the other one. So I'm going to have my hand here. I'm going to be like, okay, I want you to try not to increase the pressure of your leg into your hand as you work on that other side. Now, what I want to make sure is that my client knows this is the important part. This is what I want you to focus on. This becomes a little bit of the distraction, but you'll be surprised when you find stability, the other side, a lot of times will actually move better. Or let's say I was having my client move that leg and their eyes were going here, there, everywhere. They were blinking. I might be like, okay, Jane Doe, that's my client, look at an object and now just kind of shift left to right of it. Okay. Now find yourself in the center. Now I want you to look at that target and not shift to the left and right as you move your knee in and out. So this helps with a little bit of vision, but it also helps with getting that spine nice and reactive as I'm trying to move that limb. Or let's say this. I'm trying to do the same thing. I'm trying to get that leg to move. And I feel my client, like every time they move, they want to almost side bend. So it's like their body's helping that leg, and or it's, you can call it like almost being muddy. Like our brain has a map for our body and it understands where parts are, but sometimes that can get a little bit muddy. So you may see, I may be like, okay, move your leg in and out, but your body wants to move the spine with it. It's almost like it's mapping it together. And you see a lot of that too when individuals may have a affected side and they're trying to walk. So the body has to compensate to move forward, and you might get some, that spinal movement to get that hip and leg going forward. But I might be like, okay, can you feel your hand onto your ribs? Okay, lean into your hand and out. Lean into your hand and out. Okay, now I want you to maintain that pressure as you move that leg in and out. And it's just a way to help the brain recognize, like, okay, I don't need to move my spine necessarily to move my leg. And it will all be dependent on the individual and where you might need to start.
Wow, fascinating.
You see a lot of that in the early days of after stroke when you're trying to get parts moving again, like in order to move your arm, a lot of times you end up moving a lot, getting a lot of shoulder movement and such. That's why I asked you about isolation or blocking, so that you can try and learn to focus on the specific muscles that you're working on. We're back to taking a focused approach.
Yeah. And Ralph, what I'll tell people is with stroke, let's say you may have your right side affected, but guess what's going to happen to that left side? It's going to want to do a lot of work. So we got to remap that side out and help the body understand where that left side is. So then we can start moving the right side better. And let's think about walking, right? So when I'm walking, when I'm on that front leg, it has to be stable enough for this one to swing through. So let's say that this side of my body is affected by a stroke. This side is doing a lot of work. If this one's not stable enough, then there's going to be compensations, and that other side won't be able to work as much or as good as it can because you still have to find that stability on the other side.
I think a lot of stroke survivors concentrate on what they're trying to fix as opposed to understanding that you might need to get that other side uninvolved so that you're not overcompensating. Because after you have a stroke, you go, my leg doesn't work right. So you try and work on that leg. And we see people sometimes say all of a sudden, my other leg's hurting. Well, that's a big cue that you're doing overcompensating.
Yeah.
And so learning these techniques where you, as you put it, isolate or get rid of that other side, or a way to deal with that.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else? I could talk to you all day, but
Well, I really appreciate you all letting me come in and just talk a little bit
I
about.
really appreciate the new information. Thank you.
No problem. Like I said, if you found something today, try to use it in your daily routine. Um, if you have questions or um, need additional information, or I do like with Judy knows, like within the Neuro Studio, there's other people that could be in your location, or there's people that do virtual stuff, or if you just got a question, hit me up.
well,
You know,
you do
happy to help.
virtual stuff, and I'll tell everybody who's here and everybody who's watching on YouTube that I'll put all your contact information in the description below the video when I post it, because we really appreciate you coming and sharing your knowledge with us. The things that I think I got out of it are like more conceptual than actual exercises, and that I think that's the point.
Yeah.
And if anybody wants to reach out to you, then they'll be able to do that
Yeah, please
through
do.
your information.
Sounds good.
How
Anybody?
long
Great.
is the virtual session?
I knew it. What was
What
that,
was it?
Winnie?
How long is your virtual session?
Well, normally we play around virtual around 50 minutes. But what I want to say in the realm of exercise is we kind of do get embedded into our head. We have to work out for an hour. But what I want to find out is what can your body do within a certain amount of time? Because what I don't want to see happen is we're just going for a full hour and your body's increasing in symptoms. But normally it's around 50 minutes for a virtual. And what I do with my virtual, I send all my recordings to you. So then you have the time to kind of replay it, watch your own body, because I think that's the beauty of things. We can't see our own body move. So we may not understand, like we're trying to move, we're trying to do a squat and our shoulder is hiking up, right? So you do get the recording, and after each session, we discuss what worked, how do we implement this concept into your daily life, and then go from there. So it's very,
Good.
I'm sorry. It's very educational, and that's a big thing about me is, I want people to learn, and I tell people like I want to help you, and I also want to help you get to the point where you can implement stuff yourself and be aware of it.
I believe I remember from our talk that you give homework, that you provide guidance through the sessions for people during the week. Everybody here and anybody who really wants to get better from a stroke understands that you don't get better in a couple of PT sessions or any couple of sessions. You mentioned early on that, you know, being able to do it at home and being able to do it on your own. So
Yeah. And then with me, it's I don't necessarily give you 3 exercises to do 3 times a week, 15 reps. I'd be like, okay, we saw Angela really had a good reaction to using a visual cue. So when Angela goes and does some of her PT work, how can we incorporate that visual cue and concept into her work outside of what we're doing? And to me, that's one of the most important things is using your systems in through your exercises, or you can incorporate it. I don't, there's probably not too many people that likes to do chores, but even when you're standing up at a sink, you can find a visual target and maintain your distance from it or try not to get below it as you do your movement. So the beauty is that a concept can work it can work throughout your whole day, no matter what you're doing.
And yeah, maybe I should have used guidance or concepts as opposed to homework, because homework
Oh, that's all right.
conjures up specific exercises like the PTs, you know, hand you the sheets. And no, I meant more like you have guidance between sessions on the concepts.
Yeah. Right.
All right. Anybody else before we let Corey go? Well,
Thank you
okay.
very much for your time today. I appreciate the information.
You're very welcome. Glad I could come by and meet you all. And like I said, reach out if you need anything, okay?
And I want to thank you also, Corey.
Thanks, bro.
Really
Appreciate
appreciate
it.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you.
This was great.
You're welcome. Enjoy the rest of your day, okay?
You do the same.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Do all you can with what you have, in the time you have, in the place you are. Do all you can. Do all you can.